Hi, everybody. I want to introduce the idea of the trophic effect of art. The trophic effect is a phenomenon that has been recorded where when an element, an item, um, something is introduced into a system, that it affects the larger system. So, the example that first got me interested in the idea of this was Yellowstone Park. They were having an issue with coyotes, that they were eating all the deers and rabbits and really having a big effect on the deer population. And therefore they were the coyote packs were getting larger. It might have been wolves or coyotes, and but they were getting out of control. And so a lot of times, and they still do this today, they will go in and manage wildlife populations when they get out of balance, and they'll allow hunters to go in and kill the wolves. I know they've done them with wild pigs, sometimes even with deer that they get out of control, and so they'll go in and try to manage that way. But they went in at first to thin out the wolves so that the deers or the rabbits and small animals would come back and populate the area. But then at some point they got the idea like, let's just get rid of I'm saying coyotes and wolves, but whichever one it was. And they completely eradicated the entire coyote population. And from that is what they noticed is within time, the deer came back, the rabbits, small rodents, squirrels, all the things that the coyotes had been eating were coming back. But then is what started happening is with so many deer and the small animals that they started eating the vegetation. And there was nothing to keep the deer population intact and at a good number for the environment. And so therefore, then the deer started populating and getting larger, rabbits, and they ate all the vegetation. And then once the vegetation was gone, erosion became an issue. So the ground and the grass and the ground cover and the vegetation, trees, bushes had all been eaten away. And then literally the waterway, the river, was being altered based on the erosion of the area. And so it actually was worse because everything green was being consumed and eaten out of balance. And so then they literally had to reintroduce the coyotes back in the population to try to find that balance. I use that example because it describes the idea of you can't introduce anything new or take something out of a system without impacting the entire environment. And art is exactly that way. We've, over the semester, have talked about the value of art to society. And I would argue that it impacts us on so many ways, including the way we think. If there is a piece of art that is in your environment, it impacts and affects what you think, and how you think. And and then rarely do we stop and see how that escalates out, how that expands out, ripples out those thoughts. So the example I have as far as art is I do art consulting. I help communities and municipalities with their creative projects and introducing art into the public. And one area I work with is called Hometown. It's over in North Richland Hills. And we put art, the first couple of years, we put 3 works of art out. And this one piece that we placed in was in the median of a road. It was ideal for it. It was a flower bed, had ground covering actually, and they put a pedestal and put it up. And people hated it. They hated the color. They hated the look. They just hated this piece of art. Now, I say the people, it was a small percentage, maybe 10, 20% of the community really, really disliked this work of art. And the more that it bubbled up there, this dislike and people starting to talk, And there's about 550 homes in this little community. But people started talking, and they started criticizing. They started contacting the leaders of the community and developing on the chat groups were just all this really hate, and how there was this conspiracy going on, and how who paid for it. And I was attacked. I was, it's like I was the cousin of the developer who he brought me in, and I was running things and siphoning money. I mean, it just became ridiculous. And it became so extreme that the lady who was the head of the art committee and the head of the HOA, the homeowners association, was literally run out of town. At first, they were criticizing her online and to friends, and there was this buzz going around. And then we had two different community meetings where the community came out and met and discussed this issue, and they were mean. They were terrible. They were criticizing her. She got to the point where she wouldn't even leave her home. And she was so depressed because, she was trying to make the community better and working to bring art and beautify the area. And there's just so many things that she did. It was a full-time job for her. And she literally sold her home and moved. She was run out of this community. She sold her home and moved because of a piece of art. So, you might not see how the art impacts it or have thought about it, but the trophic effect is something that's real. And if you're ever creating art or placing art, you have to consider the impact that the art will have on the surrounding area, whether it's the immediate area we've talked about the dialogue between the different elements and what's in the area, to the people that interact with it. On a simple level, imagine a sculpture in a dog park. Well, you better put it off the ground or it's going to be yellow stained around, about 3 feet down around the base. You have to consider weed eating. You can't put a work of art directly on the ground where the people are going to weed eat around it, because eventually they literally will wear away the art, whether it's the paint off the art or the metal from the sculpture or the wood or whatever it is. So these are considerations you have to think about. The trophic effect thinks about the bigger system and how it puts things out of balance and changes it, and what impact that will have. And as the artist, you're absolutely responsible for it. So that's the trophic effect. The activity that you're going to do for this is you go and identify public works of art that you can identify. You identify the work of art, and then whether it's imagined, real, or documented trophic effect it's had on that community. Who are the stakeholders? Who's involved? Who does it impact? How does it impact? And come up with, and I'll put in the assignment how many examples, but think about at least 5, 6, 8 different examples. 3 to 8 would be my guess of examples of how it impacts its surrounding environment. So that's your assignment. That's the trophic effect. I'll see you guys online.